The scorching sun beat down mercilessly on Lily Foster's blistering shoulders as she crawled through the jagged rocks of Desolation Canyon, her parched lips cracking with each labored breath. She had been left to die abandoned by the man she had foolishly trusted with her heart and her future, with nothing but the tattered dress on her back and the bitter taste of betrayal in her mouth. Arizona Territory, 1878. The untamed wilderness stretched out before her like a death sentence. 3 days without water, 2 without food, and the relentless heat of June had reduced her once strong body to a trembling shell. Lily had watched the dust cloud from Richard's wagon disappear over the horizon after he'd taken everything: her money, her supplies, even the locket containing the last picture of her deceased parents. All that remained was the cruel echo of his laughter as he'd pushed her from the wagon and declared he no longer needed the burden of a wife when gold and freedom beckoned from California. Lily's vision blurred as she dragged herself toward the shadow of a large boulder. Her 24 years of life seemed to be slipping away with each painful movement. The daughter of a Boston schoolteacher had not been prepared for the harsh realities of the frontier. She had come west following dreams and promises, only to find herself dying alone in this savage place. The sound of hoofbeats penetrated her delirium. Hallucinations, she thought, as darkness threatened to overtake her, but the hoofbeats grew louder, more distinct. With the last of her strength, Lily raised her head. A tall figure on horseback materialized through the heat waves, like a mirage-given form. The rider dismounted in a fluid motion that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle and approached cautiously. "Madam, you alive there?" The voice was deep, tinged with concern. Lily tried to respond, but her parched throat produced only a rasp. The man knelt beside her, and through her haze she saw a face weathered by sun and wind, eyes the color of a summer sky, and a week's growth of beard on a strong jaw. "Name's Jake Tucker," he said, uncorking his canteen. "Drink slow now, too much at once will make you sick." The water that touched Lily's lips felt like salvation itself. She sipped obediently, fighting the urge to gulp it down. "Richard left me," she managed to whisper once her throat could form words again. 3 days ago. Jake's expression hardened. Man who leaves a woman out here alone deserves a special kind of hell. He glanced around, assessing the barren landscape. "Can you ride? My camp's not far, got food and shelter there." Lily nodded weakly, and Jake lifted her as though she weighed nothing, settling her gently on his horse before mounting behind her. His arms encircled her as he took the reins, and despite her exhaustion and the impropriety of being held by a stranger, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in days: safe. Jake's camp was nestled in a small grove of cottonwoods that had somehow found enough water to survive in this harsh land. A small fire pit, a bedroll, and a few supplies spoke of a man accustomed to traveling light. He helped her down from the horse and settled her on his bedroll. "Rest easy," he said, moving to tend the fire. "I'll fix something to eat." Lily watched through half-closed eyes as Jake worked with efficient movements. His clothes were worn but clean buckskin pants, a faded blue shirt, and a battered hat he'd removed upon entering camp. A gun belt hung over a nearby branch within easy reach. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice still rough. Jake didn't look up from the small pot he was stirring. "Out here you help folks in trouble. Simple as that." He paused, then added more quietly, "Besides, no decent man would leave a woman to die." The food was simple beans flavored with salt pork and a piece of hardtack softened in the broth, but to Lily, it was the finest meal she'd ever tasted. Jake watched her eat with patient eyes. "This is your last meal, isn't it?" she asked suddenly, noticing how he'd given her nearly everything from the pot, taking only a few bites for himself. A corner of Jake's mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. "Got more supplies cached not far from here. Was heading to Yuma when I found you." He studied her face. "You got people waiting on you somewhere." Lily shook her head, setting the empty bowl aside. "No one. Richard was." She swallowed hard. "We were going to California. He said we'd make a new life." Some men make promises they never intend to keep, Jake said, his voice hard. And you? Lily asked. Do you keep your promises, Mr. Tucker? His eyes met hers steadily. I don't make ones I can't keep, miss. Foster, Lily Foster, she shivered despite the warmth of the evening, and I'm afraid I have nothing to repay your kindness. Jake shook his head and tossed another small branch onto the fire. Wasn't looking for payment. He glanced at the darkening sky. You should sleep. Morning comes early out here. Exhaustion pulled at Lily's limbs, but fear kept her from closing her eyes. What if Richard comes back? Jake's hand moved reflexively toward his gun. Then he'll answer to me. The quiet certainty in his voice was more reassuring than any elaborately worded promise could have been. When Lily awoke the next morning, Jake was already up, tending to his horse. The simple domesticity of the scene, a man caring for his animal in the soft light of dawn, brought an unexpected lump to her throat. How different from Richard, who had treated his horses as carelessly as he had treated her. Morning, Jake called, noticing she was awake. There's coffee if you want it. Lily sat up, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. She attempted to smooth her tangled hair and brush the dust from her dress. Thank you for everything, Jake nodded, bringing her a tin cup of strong black coffee. How are you feeling today? Better, she admitted, though her body still ached from her ordeal. What happens now? Jake squatted on his heels, balancing easily in a posture that spoke of countless campfires. Depends. Where were you heading before things went wrong? California, San Francisco. The dream sounded hollow now, even to her own ears. Richard said there were opportunities there. It's a long way, Jake said, and not a journey for someone alone. He stared into the fire for a long moment before continuing. I'm headed to Yuma, got some business there after that. He shrugged. You're welcome to ride along if you want, at least as far as town. They got a decent hotel, telegraph office, you could contact family maybe. I told you I have no one, Lily said, more sharply than she intended. She softened her tone. I'm sorry, that was unkind, it's just. My parents died last year, influenza. I was working as a seamstress when I met Richard. He was persuasive, Jake nodded, understanding in his eyes. Men like that usually are. He stood, dusting off his hands. Offer stands. Yuma's 3 days' ride from here. I can get you there safely, help you find work maybe. After that, it's your choice. Lily looked at him, this stranger who had saved her life and asked for nothing in return. In Boston, she would never have trusted a man she'd just met, especially one who lived as Jake Tucker clearly did on the edges of civilization. But Boston's rules seemed very far away now. I accept, she said. Thank you. They broke camp efficiently, with Jake showing Lily how to roll the bedding and pack the few supplies. He was patient but thorough, treating her not as a helpless woman but as a partner in their journey. It was a novel experience for Lily, who had been raised to believe a lady should leave such practical matters to men. You ride? Jake asked as he saddled his horse, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes. A little, Lily admitted. My father taught me when I was young, though it wasn't considered proper for a lady, Jake snorted. Out here, proper doesn't keep you alive, practical does. He adjusted the stirrup. We'll ride double until we reach my cache, got a second horse there. The journey to Jake's hidden supplies took most of the morning. Lily found herself growing increasingly aware of the man whose arms encircled her as they rode. His chest was solid against her back, his breathing steady. He smelled of leather, horses, and the clean scent of the outdoors, nothing like Richard's cologne and brilliantine. Jake's cache was cleverly hidden in a rock formation that would be easy to overlook if you didn't know what to seek. He retrieved saddlebags, ammunition, and led out a second horse, a dappled gray mare with a white blaze. This is Dove, he said, stroking the mare's neck. She's gentle but smart, won't let you ride into trouble if you give her her head. Lily approached the horse cautiously, letting the mare sniff her hand. She's beautiful. She's yours for now, Jake said, handing her the reins. Let's get you outfitted proper before we head out. From his supplies, Jake produced clothing that would have scandalized Lily's Boston acquaintances' trousers, a cotton shirt, a wide-brimmed hat, and sturdy boots. "These belonged to a young ranch hand who didn't make it," he explained when she looked at him questioningly. "Fever took him 2 months back. I was bringing his things to his family in Yuma." "I can't take a dead man's clothes," Lily protested. Jake's expression remained impassive. "Your dress won't last another day out here and you can't ride proper in it anyway. Billy wouldn't mind, he was a good kid." Lily relented, and Jake tactfully moved away to give her privacy while she changed behind a stand of rocks. The clothes were too large, but she rolled up the sleeves and pant legs and secured everything with a belt Jake provided. When she emerged, she felt strangely liberated despite the impropriety of her attire. Jake's eyes widened slightly when he saw her, but he quickly masked his reaction. "You'll need this too," he said, handing her a bandana. "For the dust." They rode side by side now, Lily growing more comfortable on Dove's back with each passing hour. Jake didn't talk much, but the silence between them was companionable rather than awkward. Occasionally, he would point out landmarks or signs of wildlife, teaching her to read the landscape as he did. As the sun began its descent, Jake led them to a small canyon where a trickle of a spring provided precious water. "We'll camp here tonight," he said, dismounting. "Water and shelter, good spot." Lily slid from Dove's back, her muscles protesting after the long day's ride. She tried not to wince, but Jake noticed. "You'll be sore tomorrow," he said, not unkindly. "Gets better with time." They worked together to make camp, and Lily insisted on taking responsibility for the meal. Jake had more supplies now: flour for biscuits, dried beef, and even coffee. She mixed the biscuit dough with water and a pinch of salt, forming rough patties to cook in the small skillet Jake carried. "You're handy with that," Jake observed as she worked. "I know how to cook," Lily said. "Richard didn't marry me just for my looks." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Jake was quiet for a moment, then asked, "How long were you married?" "6 months. Lily poked at the biscuits with a stick. "Long enough to learn I'd made a terrible mistake, not long enough to figure a way out of it." "Well," Jake said, leaning back against his saddle, "looks like he solved that problem for you at least." Despite everything, Lily laughed, a short, startled sound that felt foreign to her throat. "I suppose he did in his way." They ate in comfortable silence as darkness fell, bringing with it a chill that made Lily grateful for the fire. After the meal, Jake cleaned his revolver with practiced movements while Lily mended a tear in one of his shirts with needle and thread from his saddlebags. "You don't ask many questions," Lily observed, tying off a neat stitch. Jake glanced up. "Figure folks tell what they want known. Rest isn't my business." "Don't you want to know why I was fool enough to end up abandoned in a canyon?" Jake reassembled his revolver with quick, precise movements. "Reckon you told me already. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it." He holstered the weapon. "Happens to the best of us." "And you?" Lily asked, setting aside the mended shirt. "Has it happened to you?" Jake's face remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. "Once or twice." He stood abruptly. "Should turn in. Got a long ride tomorrow." Lily watched as he spread his bedroll on the opposite side of the fire from hers. The distance he maintained was both proper and somehow disappointing. She curled into her own blankets, listening to the night sounds of the desert, so different from Boston's streets or even the wagon train she'd traveled with Richard. "Jake," she said softly into the darkness, "why are you really helping me?" There was a long silence, and Lily thought he might have already fallen asleep. Then his voice came, quiet but clear. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Miss Foster, even you, maybe even me." Before she could ask what he meant, his breathing deepened into sleep, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and the star-filled Arizona sky. The next day brought them deeper into the canyon lands, a maze of stone that Jake navigated with the confidence of one born to the territory. Lily's muscles screamed in protest as she mounted Dove, but she gritted her teeth and made no complaint. Each hour in the saddle grew marginally more comfortable as her body adjusted to the unfamiliar exercise. Around midday, Jake pulled his horse to a stop, his posture suddenly alert. Lily reined in beside him. "What is it?" she asked, keeping her voice low. Jake's eyes scanned the ridge above them. "Riders, been following us since morning." Fear clutched at Lily's heart. "Richard," Jake shook his head, "3 of them, your husband alone." "As far as I know," Lily said, straining to see what Jake had spotted, "could be nothing, could be trouble." Jake adjusted his hat lower over his eyes. "Keep riding, normal pace, don't look back." They continued forward, but Lily could feel the change in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. Jake rode slightly behind her now, his right hand resting casually near his holster. The casual conversation that had begun to develop between them was gone, replaced by watchful silence. An hour later, the riders appeared, no longer concealing their presence. 3 men on horseback approached from behind, spreading out in a manner that made the hair on Lily's neck stand up. Jake motioned for her to stop. "Afternoon," called the lead rider, a heavy-set man with a pockmarked face and a week's worth of beard. "Fine day for a ride." Jake nodded but said nothing. His posture remained relaxed, but Lily could sense the coiled tension in him. "Mighty pretty companion you got there," the man continued, his eyes lingering on Lily in a way that made her skin crawl despite being dressed in men's clothing. "Don't often see ladies out this way." "We're just passing through," Jake said, his voice neutral. "Headed to Yuma." The second rider, a thin man with a scar running from his eye to his chin, spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Yuma's a fair piece still, dangerous country between here and there." "We'll manage," Jake replied. The third man, younger than the others but with cold eyes that seemed to miss nothing, circled around to their right. "Might be safer traveling together, safety in numbers and all." "We prefer to ride alone," Jake said, still pleasant but with steel underneath. The lead rider shrugged. "Suit yourself, but times are hard. Man might be tempted to take what isn't his." His eyes flicked to Lily again. "Or who?" Jake's posture shifted subtly. "I wouldn't recommend that course of action, friend." A tense silence stretched between them. Lily's heart hammered in her chest as she watched the men evaluate Jake. There was something in his stance, in the calm confidence with which he faced them, that gave them pause. Finally, the leader laughed, though the sound held no humor. "Just making conversation, no harm in that." He tipped his hat. "You folks have a safe journey now." They rode away, but Lily could feel their eyes on her back. Jake waited until they were out of sight before turning to her. "We need to change course," he said. "Those men will be back and they'll bring friends." "Who were they?" Lily asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to control it. "Trouble," Jake said simply. He studied the terrain. "There's a ranch about half a day's ride east of here. Man named Hollister runs it. Not the friendliest sort, but he won't turn away folks in need. You know him?" A ghost of a smile crossed Jake's face. "Know of him. Did him a favor once, though he might not remember it that way." He turned his horse. "Come on, we'll push hard until dark." They rode at a punishing pace, taking a route that seemed deliberately confusing, doubling back, crossing streams, riding through rocky terrain that left minimal tracks. Jake was silent, his attention focused on their surroundings and the task of keeping them hidden. By the time they stopped, the sun was setting and both horses were lathered with sweat. "We'll rest here briefly," Jake said, dismounting and helping Lily down. "Just long enough for the horses to recover." Lily's legs nearly buckled as she touched the ground. She leaned against Dove, trying to steady herself. "Those men," she said. "They weren't just passing travelers, were they?" Jake shook his head as he loosened the horses' cinches to let them breathe easier. "No, outlaws, most likely, looking for easy pickings." He glanced at her. "You handled yourself well back there." "I was terrified," Lily admitted. "Being afraid is smart, letting fear control you isn't." Jake handed her his canteen. "Drink. We've got another few hours of riding after this." They continued their journey as night fell, traveling by moonlight through terrain that grew increasingly unfamiliar to Lily. The desert took on an otherworldly quality in the silvery light, beautiful but alien. Jake rode close beside her now, occasionally reaching over to correct Dove's direction or pointing out obstacles in their path. It was well past midnight when they finally saw lights in the distance, the scattered glow of a ranch house and outbuildings nestled in a small valley. "Hollister's place," Jake said. "Remember, he's not the welcoming sort. Let me do the talking." They approached cautiously. A dog began barking as they neared, and soon a lantern appeared on the porch of the main house. A shotgun barrel gleamed in the light. "That's far enough," called a gruff voice. "State your business." Jake reined his horse to a stop, keeping his hands visible. "Name's Tucker, Jake Tucker, looking for a night's shelter for myself and the lady." There was a pause. "Tucker," the shotgun lowered slightly. "The bounty hunter." Jake nodded. "The same." The man on the porch considered this, then lowered the shotgun completely. "Heard you was dead." "Not yet," Jake replied, "though some have tried." Hollister, for it must be him, grunted. "Might be those same ones been rustling my cattle. Come on in, then." "But I'll want payment. Nothing's free here." Jake dismounted and helped Lily down, whispering, "Let me handle this." Hollister was a broad-shouldered man with a face as weathered as the land he worked. His eyes, when they fell on Lily, narrowed with suspicion rather than interest. "Who's she?" "Lily Foster," Jake said. "Widow, taking her to Yuma." Lily shot Jake a surprised look at the lie, but kept silent as he had asked. Hollister looked skeptical but nodded toward a small cabin set apart from the main house. "Can use the old foreman's quarters. Wife'll bring food." He turned his attention back to Jake. "You said payment. What kind you offering?" "Information," Jake said. "About the men who have been taking your cattle and maybe a more permanent solution to your problem." Hollister's interest visibly sharpened. "Inside, both of you." The ranch house was sparsely, but comfortably furnished, a far cry from the refined homes of Boston, but luxurious compared to the desert they'd been traversing. A woman who must be Mrs. Hollister, thin and careworn but with kind eyes, brought them coffee and leftover stew without asking questions. Once they were seated at the rough-hewn table, Hollister leaned forward. "Now, this information," Jake sipped his coffee before answering. "3 men riding together, leader's a big fellow, pockmarked face. Second skinny with a scar down his face. Third's younger, dark-haired, cold-eyed." Hollister slammed his fist on the table. "Slater's gang, been hitting ranches all through this territory, killed 2 of my men last month. They're camped in the Red Canyon," Jake continued. "At least 6 more men there, planning something big from what I could gather." Lily stared at Jake in shock. How could he know all this? They'd only encountered the men briefly on the trail, yet he spoke with absolute certainty. "How do you know that?" Hollister demanded, echoing Lily's thoughts. Jake's expression remained impassive. "Been tracking them for a while. They've got prices on their heads in 3 territories." He set down his cup. "I aim to collect." Suddenly, pieces began falling into place in Lily's mind. Bounty hunter. The gun he handled with such expertise, the way those men had hesitated when confronting him. Jake Tucker wasn't just a cowboy who had rescued her by chance, he was someone who hunted men for a living. Hollister was nodding slowly. "So that's your payment. Shelter tonight and you'll deal with Slater." "Fair trade," Jake agreed, Mrs. Hollister, who had been silently observing the conversation, finally spoke. "The poor girl's dead on her feet. Can't this wait till morning?" Hollister grunted his assent, and the woman led Lily to the small cabin Jake had mentioned. It was simple but clean, with a bed, table, and washstand. Most importantly, it had a door that locked. "Don't mind my husband," Mrs. Hollister said as she lit the lamp. "He's a good man, just hardened by this country." She placed a bundle of clothing on the bed. "These might fit you better than those men's things. Get some rest, child." When she had gone, Lily sat heavily on the bed, her mind whirling with questions. Jake had saved her life, shown her nothing but kindness and respect, yet he was a man who made his living hunting others. The thought should have frightened her, but strangely, it didn't. Instead, she felt a complex mix of emotions she couldn't quite untangle. A soft knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. "It's me." Jake's voice came low through the wood. Lily hesitated, then opened the door. Jake stood there, looking uncomfortable. Thought you deserved an explanation, he said. You're a bounty hunter, Lily stated. Jake nodded. I only hunt men who have earned it, murderers mostly. His eyes met hers steadily. I was tracking Slater's gang when I found you, been on their trail for 2 weeks. Why didn't you tell me? Most people hear bounty hunter and think killer, Jake shrugged. Didn't seem important at the time. Is that why you helped me? Because you were already heading this way? Something like hurt flickered across Jake's face. I helped you because you needed helping, Miss Foster. The rest is just circumstance. Lily studied him in the lamplight. Despite everything she'd been taught about propriety and caution, she found she believed him. What happens now? We rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll deal with Slater and his men, then we continue to Yuma as planned. He paused. Unless you'd rather stay here, Hollisters could use help and it'd be safer than riding with me. No, Lily said, the word coming out more forcefully than she intended. I mean, I'd like to continue our journey if you'll still have me. Jake's expression softened. Get some sleep, Lily. Morning comes early. He turned to go, but Lily called after him. Jake, thank you for telling me the truth. He nodded once, then disappeared into the darkness, leaving Lily to wonder at the strange turn her life had taken and the even stranger man who had become her protector. The pre-dawn light was just beginning to gray the eastern sky when a soft knock woke Lily from a deep sleep. She sat up, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. Miss Foster? It was Mrs. Hollister's voice. Mr. Tucker asked me to wake you. Says you need to be ready to ride soon. Lily dressed quickly in the clothes Mrs. Hollister had provided, a simple but well-made skirt and blouse that fit reasonably well, though they were a bit loose in the waist. She folded Billy's clothes carefully, intending to return them to Jake for delivery to the young man's family as promised. When she emerged from the cabin, the ranch was already alive with activity. Cowboys moved purposefully between the buildings, and several horses stood saddled near the corral. Jake was deep in conversation with Hollister and 3 of his men, all armed and looking grimly determined. Jake spotted her and excused himself, coming to meet her. Change of plans, he said without preamble. Slater's men were spotted near the north pasture at first light. Looks like they're planning to hit the ranch today. Fear clutched at Lily's heart. Because they saw us, are they following us here? No, Jake shook his head. This was already in motion, just bad timing for us. He glanced back at the men preparing to ride out. Hollister's gathering his hands to defend the place. I've agreed to help. Of course, Lily said, understanding immediately. You can't leave them to face those men alone. Something like approval flickered in Jake's eyes. Mrs. Hollister will keep you safe in the main house. Once this is over, we'll continue to Yuma. I want to help, Lily said impulsively. Jake shook his head firmly. This isn't your fight. Those men threatened me too, Lily reminded him, and I'm not entirely helpless. At Jake's skeptical look, she added, I can shoot. My father taught me. Knowing how to shoot at targets isn't the same as shooting at men who are shooting back, Jake said, but there was less conviction in his voice. I'm not asking to ride out with you, Lily clarified, but I can help defend the house if needed. Jake studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but you stay with Mrs. Hollister and you only shoot if absolutely necessary. Understood, understood, Lily agreed, relief and anxiety mingling in her chest. The next hours passed in tense preparation. The ranch hands fortified the main house and barn, positioning themselves strategically around the property. Hollister's wife, a more formidable woman than she had first appeared, calmly loaded shotguns and placed them near windows while instructing Lily on which approaches to watch. Most likely they'll come from the west, she explained, pointing. That ravine gives them cover almost to the corral. Jake remained outside with Hollister and his men, his tall figure easily distinguishable among them. Lily found her eyes drawn to him repeatedly, worried in a way that seemed disproportionate to their brief acquaintance. The attack, when it came, was sudden and violent. Gunfire erupted from the direction Mrs. Hollister had predicted, followed by shouts and the thunder of hooves. Lily positioned herself at a window as instructed. rifle ready but her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the chaos outside. Through the dust and confusion, she spotted Jake moving with purpose between positions, firing with a calm precision that contrasted sharply with the frantic exchanges around him. He dropped one attacker with a single shot, then rolled behind a water trough as return fire splintered the wood where he had been standing. The battle seemed to stretch endlessly, though in reality it couldn't have lasted more than 20 minutes. Lily fired twice when riders approached too close to the house, missing but forcing them to veer away. Mrs. Hollister proved to be an excellent shot, wounding at least one man who attempted to reach the porch. Then suddenly it was over. The remaining attackers retreated, leaving behind 3 of their companions dead or wounded in the ranch yard. The defenders had fared better, one cowboy with a bullet grazed to the arm, another with a shallow wound to his leg. No one killed. Lily rushed outside once Mrs. Hollister deemed it safe, her eyes searching frantically for Jake. She found him helping to secure the captured outlaws, seemingly unharmed. The relief that flooded through her was so powerful it made her knees weak. Jake looked up as she approached, his expression softening when he saw her. "You all right?" "Yes," Lily managed. "You." "Takes more than Slater's boys to put me down," he said with a slight smile. "You did good staying inside like I asked." "I fired twice," Lily admitted. "I don't think I hit anyone." "Good," Jake said, surprising her. "Killing changes a person. Even when it's necessary." He glanced at the men being tied up. "Slater wasn't with them. Neither were the 2 we met on the trail. They'll be back." Hollister approached, his shotgun still in hand. 6 of them captured or dead, that leaves at least 3 unaccounted for. He looked at Jake. "What's your plan, Tucker?" "They'll lick their wounds, then come back stronger," Jake said. "Probably tonight. We should move the women to town." "I'm not leaving my home," Mrs. Hollister stated firmly, coming to stand beside her husband. "We've faced worse than Slater." Hollister placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. "Martha's right, we stand our ground." Jake nodded, respecting their decision. "Then we prepare. But Miss Foster should go to town. No sense in her risking her life in your fight." "I'm staying too," Lily said, the words surprising even her. "I can help Mrs. Hollister tend to the wounded, and I can shoot if needed." Jake looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Lily's expression must have convinced him of the futility of it. "Your choice," he said finally, "but you stay in the house tonight, no matter what happens outside." The rest of the day passed in preparation for the expected night attack. The dead were buried, the wounded tended, and the prisoners secured in a root cellar until they could be transported to the territorial authorities. Ammunition was distributed, defenses reinforced, and watches organized. As darkness fell, Lily found herself helping Mrs. Hollister prepare food for the men. The older woman worked with efficient movements that spoke of years of frontier living. "How long have you been married?" Lily asked as she kneaded dough for biscuits. 27 years, Martha Hollister replied. "Came out here when there was nothing but Apaches and jackrabbits." She glanced at Lily shrewdly. "How long have you known Tucker?" Lily focused on her task. 3 days. Martha's eyebrows rose. 3 days, and you're traveling alone with him." "He saved my life," Lily said simply. "I was abandoned in a canyon, no food, no water. He found me, shared his last meal, got me to safety." The older woman nodded slowly. "Tucker has a reputation, dangerous man, but fair." She paused. "Never heard of him traveling with a woman before." "It's not like that," Lily said quickly. "He's just helping me get to Yuma, then we'll go our separate ways." "If you say so," Martha said, but her tone suggested she saw more than Lily was admitting, even to herself. Jake came in as they were finishing the meal preparations. He'd washed up and changed his shirt, but fatigue lined his face. "Any sign of them?" Lily asked. Jake shook his head. "Not yet, but they'll come." He accepted the plate Martha handed him with a nod of thanks. "You should both try to rest while you can. It's going to be a long night." "What about you?" Lily asked. "I'll eat, then take first watch." Jake's eyes met hers. "Don't worry about me, Miss Foster. This isn't my first night waiting for trouble." Lily wanted to say more but was aware of Martha's perceptive gaze. Instead, she nodded and continued her work, stealing glances at Jake as he ate quickly and methodically, a man accustomed to taking sustenance when available without the luxury of savoring it. When he finished, he stood and touched his hat brim to both women. "Thank you for the meal." He headed for the door but paused beside Lily. "Stay safe," he said quietly for her ears alone. "You too," she whispered back. After Jake left, Martha insisted Lily lie down for a few hours. "No sense in both of us being exhausted," she said practically. "I'll wake you if there's need." Lily reluctantly agreed, stretching out on a small cot in the corner of the kitchen. Despite her certainty that sleep would be impossible with the tension in the air, exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She awoke to the sound of gunfire. Martha was shaking her shoulder. "They're here," the older woman said grimly. "Get to your position." Lily grabbed the rifle that had been left for her and hurried to her assigned window. The night outside was lit by muzzle flashes and a barn that had been set ablaze, casting an eerie, flickering light over the battle. She could make out figures moving in the darkness but couldn't distinguish friend from foe at this distance. "Can you see Jake?" she asked anxiously. Martha, who was loading her shotgun at another window, shook her head. "Can't tell one from another out there, but Tucker knows what he's doing." "Worry about yourself." The attack was more coordinated than the morning's assault. The outlaws had clearly planned their approach, using the burning barn as both distraction and illumination to their advantage. Shots came from multiple directions, keeping the defenders pinned down. Lily fired when she had clear targets, her hands surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. She thought she hit one man trying to approach from the side of the house, but couldn't be sure in the confusion. A cry from outside drew her attention. One of the ranch hands had been hit and was down in the open, exposed to enemy fire. Without conscious thought, Lily dropped her rifle and ran for the door. "Girl, stop," Martha called after her, but Lily was already outside, racing toward the fallen man. Bullets kicked up dirt around her as she ran, but she reached the cowboy and grabbed his arms, dragging him toward the shelter of a nearby water trough. He was heavy, and progress was agonizingly slow. Lily was certain each step would be her last. Suddenly Jake was there, firing steadily at the attackers while shielding her with his body. "Get to the house," he ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Now, the wounded man, I've got him. Go." Lily hesitated, then ran back to the house as Jake lifted the injured ranch hand and carried him to safety. She reached the porch as Jake deposited the man behind a stack of hay bales where another cowboy could tend to him. Their eyes met across the yard, Jake's blazing with an emotion Lily couldn't name. Then he was gone again, moving through the shadows with lethal purpose. The battle continued for what seemed like hours but was probably less than one. The defenders, though outnumbered, had the advantage of position and Jake's deadly accuracy. Eventually, the attackers broke and fled, leaving behind more of their dead. As silence fell over the ranch, Lily emerged cautiously from the house. Bodies lay scattered across the yard and the barn still burned, though the flames were dying down. Cowboys moved among the fallen, checking for survivors. Of Slater and his remaining men, there was no sign. Lily searched frantically for Jake, fear clutching at her heart when she couldn't immediately locate him. Then she spotted him walking slowly from the direction of the corral, one arm pressed against his side. Even in the dim light, she could see the dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Jake?" She cried, running to him. He looked up at her voice, his face pale but composed. "Told you to stay in the house," he said, but there was no real anger in his tone. "You're hurt," Lily said, reaching for him. Jake shook his head. "Just a graze, had worse shaving." But he allowed her to slip under his good arm and help support him as they walked toward the house. Inside, Martha had already prepared for casualties. Clean bandages and water waited on the table, along with whiskey for both disinfection and pain relief. Lily helped Jake to a chair and began unbuttoning his shirt with trembling fingers. "I can manage," Jake protested weakly. "Be still," Lily commanded, surprising herself with her authoritative tone. The wound was indeed a graze, but deeper than Jake had admitted. The bullet had carved a furrow along his ribs, bleeding freely but not life-threatening if properly cleaned and bandaged. Lily set to work with a focus that left no room for modesty or hesitation. "You ran out into a firefight," Jake said as she worked, his voice low and controlled. "Could have gotten yourself killed." "That man needed help," Lily replied, not looking up from her task. "And what good would you have done him if you'd been shot too?" Jake winced as she applied whiskey to the wound. "Don't ever do that again," Lily finally met his eyes. "I can't promise that." Something shifted in Jake's expression, respect mingled with exasperation. "Stubborn woman," he muttered, but the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Yes," Lily agreed, tying off the bandage. "I am." The ranch was quiet the rest of the night. The wounded were tended, the dead laid out for burial, and watches maintained in case of another attack that never came. By morning, it was clear that Slater and his remaining men had fled the area. Jake insisted on helping with the burials despite his injury. Lily watched from the porch as he worked alongside Hollister's men, digging graves for both friend and foe. There was something deeply honorable in the way he treated even the outlaws with dignity in death. Afterward, as Jake sat cleaning his revolver at the kitchen table, Hollister approached with a small leather pouch. "Your share," the rancher said, placing it before Jake. For Slater's men, territory had bounties on 4 of them. Jake glanced at the pouch but didn't touch it. "Wasn't why I helped. I know that," Hollister said gruffly, "but a man should be paid for his work. Take it." After a moment, Jake nodded and pocketed the money. "Obliged." Hollister turned to Lily, who was helping Martha mend torn clothing. "Mrs. Hollister says you handled yourself well, Miss Foster. Says you've got grit." Coming from the taciturn rancher, it was high praise indeed. "Thank you," Lily said, "though I fear I was more scared than brave." "Being scared and doing what needs doing anyway, that's the definition of brave out here," Hollister said. He glanced between her and Jake. "You two heading out tomorrow?" Jake nodded. "If Miss Foster is up to travel." "I am," Lily assured him. The thought of continuing their journey brought both anticipation and a strange melancholy. Each day brought them closer to Yuma and to parting ways. That evening, with the ranch settled into an exhausted quiet, Jake found Lily sitting alone on the porch steps, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. He lowered himself carefully beside her, mindful of his injured side. "Beautiful," he said, nodding toward the horizon. "Yes," Lily agreed. "I never saw sunsets like this in Boston. Everything there was, contained buildings, people, even the sky seemed smaller." "Why did you really come west?" Jake asked, the question he had never directly posed before. Lily considered her answer carefully. "I thought I was following love. Richard was charming, exciting. He painted pictures of California that made it sound like paradise." She shook her head. "Now I wonder if I was really just running away from the life that was expected of me. Marriage to some proper Boston gentleman, children, charity work, tea parties, a perfectly respectable prison." Jake was quiet for a moment, then said, "And now, what do you want now?" "I don't know," Lily admitted. "For the first time in my life, I truly don't know what comes next." "It's terrifying," she glanced at him, "and strangely liberating." Jake nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Freedoms like that, scary and wonderful all at once." They sat in companionable silence as the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear, brilliant against the darkening blue. Lily found herself acutely aware of Jake beside her, the solid presence of him, the warmth radiating from his body in the cooling evening air. "Why did you become a bounty hunter?" she asked finally. Jake leaned back, resting his weight on his good arm. "Wasn't my first choice. Was a lawman for a while, deputy in a little town in Colorado. Town got destroyed in a raid. Lot of good people died." His voice remained even, but Lily sensed the pain beneath the simple words. After that, badge didn't seem to mean much anymore. Figured I could do more good hunting the worst men on my own terms. That's why you were tracking Slater, him and men like him. Jake looked at her. Men who think they can take whatever they want, hurt whoever they please. Someone has to stop them. And that someone is you, Lily said softly. Jake shrugged. Someone has to do it. Might as well be me. The simple statement revealed more about Jake Tucker than any lengthy explanation could have. Lily felt something shift inside her, respect deepening into something warmer, more complicated. Thank you, she said, for saving me. Not just in the canyon, but after, for treating me like a person, not a burden or a possession. Jake's eyes, silvered by the moonlight, met hers. You're not either of those things, Lily. Never were. It was the first time he had used her given name without the formal Miss Foster. The sound of it in his deep voice sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the evening chill. We should turn in, Jake said, breaking the moment. Long ride tomorrow. Lily nodded, suddenly unable to trust her voice. As they stood, their hands brushed briefly, a touch that might have been accidental but didn't feel that way to Lily. Jake held her gaze for a heartbeat longer than necessary, then tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Lily to wonder at the unfamiliar emotions swirling within her. They left the Hollister ranch at dawn, resupplied and rested, with Dove and Jake's Bay refreshed and ready for the journey. Martha pressed a package of food into Lily's hands, along with a spare dress and a knowing look that made Lily blush. You take care of that man, the older woman said quietly. He needs someone to remind him he's more than his gun. Hollister was more direct. Tucker, he said as they mounted up, that woman's worth 10 of most men I've known. You remember that? Jake nodded, his expression unreadable. I will. The first few hours of their journey passed in companionable silence. The terrain gradually changed from the ranch lands to more rugged country, with steep-sided mesas and deep arroyos that required careful navigation. Jake rode close beside Lily, occasionally pointing out landmarks or signs of wildlife. How's your side? Lily asked when they stopped to rest the horses near midday. Healing, Jake said, though she noticed he moved more stiffly than before. Should be fine by the time we reach Yuma. Yuma. The word hung between them, a reminder of their ultimate destination and the parting that would follow. Lily found herself wondering what would happen when they reached the town. What would she do? Where would she go? And why did the thought of saying goodbye to Jake fill her with such dread? What will you do? She asked. After Yuma, I mean, Jake shrugged. Depends, might head to California after all, heard there's good bounties there. California, Lily echoed. Her original destination now stripped of its allure by Richard's betrayal. You could still go, Jake said, watching her face. San Francisco's a good city for a woman with skills. You could find work as a seamstress, maybe start fresh. Perhaps, Lily said, though the idea held little appeal now. What about you? Don't you ever get tired of it? The hunting, the danger. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, he admitted finally. Sometimes I think about a piece of land somewhere, cattle, horses, a simpler life. Why don't you do it? Lily asked. You must have saved enough from your bounties. A shadow crossed Jake's face. A man like me. I've made enemies, killed men. They're friends, they're brothers, they have long memories. He shook his head. Settling down means becoming a target, means putting anyone close to me in danger. The implication was clear. Jake believed himself unfit for a normal life, for relationships, for love. The realization saddened Lily more than she would have expected. That's a lonely way to live, she said softly. Jake met her gaze steadily. It's the only way I know. The conversation lingered in Lily's mind as they continued their journey. She found herself studying Jake when he wasn't looking the way he sat his horse with easy confidence, the watchful awareness he maintained of their surroundings, the gentle way he treated both animals and her. He was a dangerous man. Yes, she had seen that firsthand at the ranch, but there was a fundamental decency to him that Richard, for all his polished manners, had lacked. That night, they camped in a small box canyon that offered protection from the wind and concealment from any eyes that might be watching. Jake built a small fire, and they shared the food Martha had provided. "Should reach Yuma day after tomorrow," Jake said as they finished eating. "Barring any trouble." "Have you been there before?" Lily asked. Jake nodded. "Few times. It's a rough town but growing. Got a hotel, couple of decent boarding houses." He hesitated, then added, "I know people there. Could help you find work, a place to stay." "Thank you," Lily said, warmed by his concern. "I'd appreciate that." Jake poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. "What was it like, Boston, I mean?" The question surprised Lily. Jake rarely asked about her past. Civilized, orderly. "Everyone knew their place and stayed in it," she smiled slightly. "I used to think that was a good thing. And now I think perhaps too much order can be its own kind of prison." Lily wrapped her arms around her knees. "But there were beautiful things too. Libraries with more books than you could read in a lifetime. Music, art, conversations about ideas, not just survival." Jake listened with genuine interest, and Lily found herself telling him about her childhood, her parents, the life she had left behind. He asked thoughtful questions, revealing an intelligence and curiosity that belied his rough exterior. "You miss it," he observed. "Parts of it," Lily admitted. "Not enough to go back." "What would you do, if you could do anything, be anywhere?" Lily considered the question seriously. "I'd like to teach, I think. My father was a teacher. I used to help him sometimes with his younger students." The memory brought a smile to her face. There's something wonderful about watching a child learn, seeing that moment when understanding dawns. "You'd be good at it," Jake said with quiet certainty. "How would you know that?" Lily asked, more curious than offended. "You're patient, observant, kind but not soft." Jake met her eyes across the fire. "Those make a good teacher." The simple assessment touched Lily deeply. Jake really saw her in a way Richard never had, in a way few people ever had. "What about you?" she asked. "If you could do anything besides hunting men." Jake was silent for so long Lily thought he might not answer. Then he said, "Had a grandfather who trained horses. Best horseman I ever knew. Used to watch him take wild mustangs, creatures that would as soon kill you as look at you, and gentle them without breaking their spirit." A rare smile crossed his face. "That's something I could do, I think, something worth doing." The image of Jake patiently working with wild horses, those strong hands gentle on a nervous animal, fit him perfectly. Lily could see it clearly, a small ranch, horses in a corral, Jake in his element. "You should do that," she said, "when you're ready to stop hunting." Jake's smile faded. "Maybe someday." But his tone suggested he didn't really believe it. They fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire burned down to embers. Finally, Jake stood and stretched carefully, mindful of his wounded side. "Get some sleep," he said. "I'll take first watch." "You're still healing," Lily protested. "You need rest too." "I'll wake you in a few hours," Jake promised. "Won't do either of us any good if I'm too exhausted to shoot straight if trouble comes." Lily reluctantly agreed and settled into her bedroll. She watched as Jake moved to sit with his back against a boulder, revolver across his knees, silhouetted against the night sky. There was something both lonely and noble in that solitary figure, keeping watch while others slept. "Jake," she called softly. He turned, his face hidden in shadow. "I'm glad it was you who found me in that canyon." There was a pause, then Jake's voice, gentle in the darkness. "So am I, Lily. Now sleep." She did, more peacefully than she had since leaving Boston, knowing Jake Tucker was watching over her. The next day brought them into increasingly arid country, a harsh landscape of stone and sand where water was precious and shade a rare blessing. They traveled during the cooler morning hours, then sought shelter during the worst of the midday heat before continuing in the late afternoon. As they rode, Lily became aware of a tension in Jake that hadn't been there before. He scanned the horizon more frequently, his hand straying to his revolver at the smallest sounds. "What is it?" she finally asked. "You're worried about something." Jake glanced at her, apparently unsurprised by her perception. "Slater. He's still out there, and we're heading toward Yuma where he'd expect me to take any bounties I've collected. You think he might try to ambush us?" The thought sent a chill through Lily despite the desert heat. "It's what I'd do in his place," Jake said grimly. "Set up somewhere along the trail, wait for us to pass. Should we change our route?" Jake shook his head. "Already have twice, but there's only so many ways into Yuma this time of year when the river's low enough to cross safely." The reminder of how dependent they were on Jake's knowledge of the territory sobered Lily. Without him, she would have died in that canyon or worse, been at the mercy of men like Slater. "Is there anything I can do?" she asked. Jake considered her question seriously. "Keep your eyes open. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, say so." He adjusted his hat against the glare. "And if there is trouble, if something happens to me, take my horse and ride hard for Yuma. Don't stop for anything." "Nothing's going to happen to you," Lily said with more confidence than she felt. Jake's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Planning to keep it that way, but it's good to be prepared." They made camp that evening in a small depression ringed by boulders, a defensible position with good visibility of the surrounding terrain. Jake insisted they keep the fire small and low, barely enough to heat coffee and warm their simple meal. As darkness fell, the desert came alive with unfamiliar sounds: the yip of coyotes, the rustling of small creatures in the brush, the soft hooting of owls. Lily found it beautiful but alien, a world operating by rules she was only beginning to understand. "It's the most alive place I've ever seen," she observed as they sat side by side, backs against a sun-warmed rock. "Boston seems sterile in comparison." Jake nodded, understanding. "Desert makes no pretense. It is what it is, beautiful and deadly all at once." He glanced at her. "Takes a special kind of person to see the beauty in it." "Is that a compliment, Mr. Tucker?" Lily asked, surprised by her own teasing tone. "Just an observation, Miss Foster," Jake replied, but there was warmth in his voice that belied the formal address. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in a sky untouched by city lights. Lily was acutely aware of Jake beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. In Boston, such proximity to a man not her husband would have been scandalous. Here it felt right, necessary even. "Jake," she said suddenly, turning to face him, "what happens after Yuma?" He met her gaze, his eyes serious in the starlight. "That depends." "On what?" "On what you want to happen." The simple statement hung between them, heavy with implication. Lily's heart raced as she considered her response. 3 days ago, she would never have contemplated the possibility that was now forming in her mind. But 3 days ago, she hadn't known Jake Tucker. Before she could find the words, a distant sound caught Jake's attention. He stiffened, head turning toward the source. "What is it?" Lily whispered. "Horses," Jake said, his voice barely audible. "At least 3, moving slow, could be nothing, could be trouble." He rose silently, helping Lily to her feet. "Stay close," he murmured. "We need to move the horses deeper into the rocks, away from the fire." They worked quickly and quietly, leading the animals to a more sheltered position and securing them where they couldn't be easily spotted. Jake extinguished their small fire with a handful of sand, plunging the camp into darkness. "Now what?" Lily asked, keeping her voice low. "We wait," Jake replied, guiding her to a position behind a large boulder that offered protection while allowing them to observe the approach to their camp. "And see who's riding at night." The minutes stretched endlessly as they crouched in the darkness. Lily found herself pressed against Jake's side, his arm around her shoulders, both protective and comforting. She could feel the steady beat of his heart, the controlled rhythm of his breathing. The riders came into view, eventually 3 men moving cautiously through the moonlit landscape, rifles ready. Even at a distance, Lily recognized the broad-shouldered silhouette of Slater. "It's them," she whispered, unnecessarily. Jake nodded, his arm tightening fractionally around her. "They're tracking us, smart, waiting until dark to close in." "What do we do?" "We have 2 choices," Jake said, his lips close to her ear. "Try to slip away quietly or end this here." "Can we get away without them noticing?" Jake considered. "Possibly, night's in our favor." "But they'd keep following." "Then we stand and fight," Lily said with more confidence than she felt. Jake's eyes, silvered by moonlight, studied her face. "I'd rather get you safely away. And have them hunt us all the way to Yuma." Lily shook her head. "No, this ends here." A fleeting smile crossed Jake's face. Stubborn woman. But the words held admiration rather than censure. "All right, but you stay hidden. I'll draw them in, deal with them before they know what's happening." "That's too dangerous," Lily protested. "Let me help." "You will," Jake assured her. "I need you to be my ace in the hole. When the shooting starts, they'll focus on me. That's when you can make a difference if you're sure you can hit what you aim at." Lily thought of her father's patient instruction, the hours spent practicing with his old rifle. "I can hit what I aim at," she said with quiet confidence. Jake nodded, then reached into his boot and withdrew a small derringer. "Take this, last resort if they get too close." He pressed the weapon into her hand. "2 shots, make them count." Their fingers lingered together for a moment longer than necessary. Then Jake was gone, moving through the shadows with a silence that spoke of years of experience. Lily settled into position, Jake's rifle heavier and more powerful than she was used to, braced against the rock before her. Through the darkness, she watched as Jake deliberately made himself visible, moving to where the cold remains of their fire would be obvious to the approaching riders. The outlaws spotted him almost immediately. Slater's voice carried clearly in the night air. "Well, well. If it ain't the famous Jake Tucker, all alone in the dark." "Not so alone," Jake replied calmly. "Got 3 rifles trained on you right now, Slater. Why don't you and your boys throw down your guns and live to see morning?" It was a bluff, but a convincing one. Slater and his companions hesitated, scanning the darkness for non-existent allies. "Don't see nobody but you, Tucker," Slater called, but uncertainty tinged his voice. "That's the idea," Jake said. "Last chance. Surrender now or my men open fire." For a moment Lily thought it might work. Then the youngest outlaw, the cold-eyed one from the trail, raised his rifle and fired. The shot went wide, but it was the signal for chaos to erupt. Jake dropped to one knee, his revolver clearing leather with astonishing speed. His first shot caught the young gunman in the chest, sending him tumbling from his horse. Slater and his remaining companions scattered, seeking cover among the rocks. Lily tracked Slater through the rifle sight as he circled to flank Jake's position. When he paused to take aim, she steadied her breathing just as her father had taught her and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report was deafening in the night. Slater cried out, clutching his shoulder, his own shot going wild. His head whipped around, searching for this new threat. The woman. He snarled, spotting Lily's position. "You're dead, bitch." Before he could aim, Jake's second shot caught him in the leg. Slater went down, cursing viciously. The third outlaw, seeing his leader fall, turned his horse and fled into the darkness. Jake moved with deadly purpose toward the wounded Slater, his revolver trained unwavering on the larger man. "It's over," he said. Slater, despite his injuries, lunged for his fallen rifle. Jake's third shot ended the matter permanently. The silence that followed seemed deafening. Lily remained frozen in position, the rifle still clutched in her hands until Jake called softly, "Lily, you all right?" She lowered the weapon, suddenly trembling. "Yes," she managed. "I'm fine." Jake approached, gently taking the rifle from her hands. "You did good," he said. "That shot probably saved my life." "I aimed for his shoulder," Lily said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I didn't want to kill him." "That was the right call," Jake said. "Wounding him gave me the opening I needed." The trembling intensified and Lily swayed slightly on her feet. Jake caught her arm, steadying her. "Easy," he said. "First gunfight's always the hardest." "Is it always like this?" Lily asked. "This, feeling afterward," Jake's expression softened with understanding. "The shakes, yeah, that's normal, means you're human." He guided her to a rock where she could sit. "Take deep breaths, it'll pass." Lily did as instructed, gradually regaining her composure as Jake moved methodically through the aftermath, checking the dead men, retrieving weapons and anything useful, tending to the horses that had scattered in the confusion. When he returned to her side, he had a canteen and a small flask. "Water first," he said, offering the canteen. "Then a sip of this if you want it. Medicinal purposes." Lily drank the water gratefully, then accepted the flask. The whiskey burned a trail down her throat, but it helped steady her nerves. "What happens now?" she asked, returning the flask. "We move," Jake said. "That third rider's still out there, and the shots might attract attention." He studied her face. "Think you can ride?" Lily nodded, rising to her feet with renewed determination. "Yes, I'm ready." They worked quickly to pack their meager camp and saddle the horses. Within 20 minutes, they were riding away from the scene of the gunfight, heading south by a route Jake assured would bring them to Yuma by the following afternoon. As they rode side by side through the moonlit desert, Lily found herself watching Jake's profile. This dangerous, gentle man had become more important to her in 4 days than Richard had in 6 months of marriage. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Jake," she said finally, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "about what we were discussing before." Before the interruption, he glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "What happens after Yuma?" "Yes." Lily gathered her courage. "I've been thinking about what I want, and what's that?" Jake's voice was carefully neutral. "I don't want to say goodbye in Yuma," Lily said simply. "I'm not asking for promises or declarations, just not goodbye, not yet." Jake was silent for so long that Lily began to fear she had misread everything between them. Then he said very softly, "I'd like that too." The words, simple as they were, filled Lily with a warmth that had nothing to do with the desert night. They rode on toward Yuma, toward a future neither of them could clearly see, but both were increasingly willing to face together. They reached Yuma the following afternoon, dusty and tired but alive. The town sprawled along the Colorado River, larger than Lily had expected, a busy settlement of adobe buildings, wooden structures, and canvas tents that spoke of rapid growth. Jake led them to a modest but clean hotel near the edge of town. "Wait here," he said, helping Lily dismount. "Let me make sure they have rooms available." He returned a few minutes later. "Got you a room," he said. "Private, decent lock on the door. And there's a bathhouse next door if you want to wash off the trail dust." "What about you?" Lily asked. "Got some business to attend to first," Jake said. "Need to report what happened with Slater, collect the bounty on him." He hesitated, then added, "Thought I might ask around town too." "About teaching positions." Lily's heart leapt at the implication. "You do that," Jake shrugged, suddenly looking almost shy. "Figured you might want to stay a while, see if Yuma suits you." His eyes met hers. "See if I suit you." "I'd like that," Lily said softly. Jake nodded, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "I'll be back by evening. Lock your door while I'm gone." After he left, Lily indulged in the luxury of a proper bath, the first since leaving the Hollister ranch. As she soaked in the warm water, she found herself contemplating the strange path that had led her here. A month ago, she had been Richard's wife, traveling west with dreams of California. Now she was in Yuma, alone but not lonely, waiting for a bounty hunter who had saved more than just her life. Clean and dressed in the spare clothes Martha Hollister had provided, Lily ventured onto the small balcony outside her room. Yuma spread before her, bustling with activity even as the day waned. She could see the river glinting in the distance, boats moving along its surface. Wagons and riders moved through the streets, and the sounds of commerce and conversation drifted up to her. It wasn't Boston, with its cultured refinement. It certainly wasn't the San Francisco of Richard's promises. But there was life here, opportunity, a frontier town growing into something more substantial. A place where perhaps a woman with determination could make a new start. The sun was setting when a knock came at her door. Lily checked through the small side window before opening it, relief and something warmer flooding through her at the sight of Jake standing there. He had cleaned up as well, his clothes fresh, his hair damp, his face cleanly shaved for the first time since she'd met him. "May I come in?" he asked, oddly formal. Lily stepped aside, suddenly aware of the propriety of the situation. A man and an unmarried woman alone in a hotel room. In Boston, it would have been unthinkable. Here the rules seemed different, or at least more flexible. Jake remained standing just inside the door, hat in his hands. There was something different about him, attention, but not the wary alertness of the trail. This was something else entirely. "I spoke to the sheriff," he said. "About Slater, the bounty's been paid." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch similar to the one Hollister had given him. "This is yours." Lily stared at the offered pouch. "Mine? I don't understand." "Your shot helped bring him down," Jake said simply. "Fair share of the bounty. Enough to get you started here, or wherever you decide to go." Lily made no move to take the money. "I didn't help you for payment, Jake. I know that." His eyes held her steadily. "But it's yours all the same, your choice what to do with it." Slowly, Lily accepted the pouch, setting it aside on the small table near the window. "Thank you, though it feels strange being paid for killing a man." "For stopping a man who would have killed others," Jake corrected gently. "There's a difference." Lily nodded, acknowledging the distinction. "Did you learn anything about teaching positions?" Jake's expression brightened. "Actually, yes. Towns growing fast, got more children than teachers. School boards looking to hire another instructor come fall term." He hesitated. "I might have mentioned your name to the chairman. Fellow named Davis. He said you could speak with him tomorrow if you're interested." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Lily deeply. "You did all that for me," Jake shrugged, a hint of color touching his cheeks. "Wasn't much. Just asking around." "It means a great deal," Lily said softly. "Thank you." An awkward silence fell between them, the first since they had met. Jake cleared his throat. "I should go, let you rest." He moved toward the door. "Maybe I could call for you tomorrow. Show you around town a bit before your meeting with Davis." "I'd like that," Lily said. Then, as he reached for the doorknob, "Jake, wait." He turned back, a question in his eyes. Lily stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. "You never asked what I decided to do with my share of the bounty." "That's your business," Jake said, though curiosity flickered across his face. "I think," Lily said carefully, "that I might invest it in a piece of land, somewhere with good grazing water. A place where a man who knows horses might build something worthwhile." Jake went very still, his eyes never leaving her face. "That's a specific investment." "I was thinking it might be a partnership," Lily continued, her heart pounding, "with the right person. And who might that be?" Jake's voice was hardly more than a whisper. Lily took a deep breath. "A man who found me when I was lost, who shared his last meal and perhaps his future." For a moment, Jake didn't move. Then slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised his hand to touch her cheek. "Lily," he said, her name a question and answer all at once. She leaned into his touch, closing the distance between them. "I know it's fast," she whispered. "Too fast, perhaps, but life out here doesn't wait, does it?" "No," Jake agreed, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "It doesn't." When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. Lily answered by winding her arms around his neck, drawing him closer. The kiss deepened, became something neither of them had expected to find in this harsh territory. When they finally parted, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "You should know," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I'm not an easy man, got a past that follows me, might always have men looking to settle scores." "I know who you are, Jake Tucker," Lily said, her hands framing his face. "I've seen you at your most dangerous and your most gentle. I choose both." Something like wonder crossed Jake's features. "You're sure? There'd be easier paths for a woman like you." "Easier, perhaps, but not better," Lily smiled. "Besides, I seem to have developed a taste for adventure." Jake laughed then, a sound of pure joy that transformed his weathered face. "Never thought I'd be grateful to find a woman half dead in a canyon," he said, drawing her closer, "but finding you might be the best luck I've ever had." "Not luck," Lily corrected, her heart full. "Providence." They spent the evening together, talking of plans and possibilities. Jake spoke of land he knew west of Yuma, good horse country with water and shelter. Lily described the school she hoped to establish someday, not just for the children of settlers but for anyone who wished to learn. As night deepened outside the window, their conversation turned to more immediate matters. "I should go," Jake said reluctantly. "People talk even here." Lily nodded, though letting him leave was the last thing she wanted. "When will I see you tomorrow? Breakfast?" Jake suggested. 8 o'clock. Then I can show you the town before your meeting with Davis." "I'd like that," Lily said, walking with him to the door. Jake paused with his hand on the knob, turning back to her with an expression of wonder still lingering in his eyes. "Good night, Lily Foster," he said softly, bending to kiss her once more. "Good night, Jake Tucker," she replied when they parted. "Until tomorrow." After he had gone, Lily stood for a long moment with her back against the closed door, a smile spreading across her face. 4 days ago, she had been dying in a canyon, betrayed and abandoned. Now she stood on the threshold of a new life, one she had chosen for herself, with a man unlike any she had known before. The Arizona Territory was indeed a land of harsh extremes: death and life, danger and opportunity, despair and hope, all existing side by side. In this untamed place, Lily Foster had found not just survival, but the promise of a future brighter than any she could have imagined in the ordered confines of Boston. And it had all begun with a man who had found her at her lowest moment and offered his hand, his last meal, and ultimately his heart. The following morning, Lily awakened to sunlight streaming through her window and the sounds of Yuma coming to life below. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she felt truly hopeful about the day ahead. She dressed carefully in the best of the clothes Martha had given her, arranging her hair as neatly as possible without her usual combs and pins. The woman who looked back at her from the small mirror above the washstand was different from the Boston socialite who had set out for California, her face sun-browned, her eyes holding a confidence that came from survival rather than social position. Jake was waiting for her in the hotel dining room, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the civilized setting, but rising immediately when she entered. The smile that transformed his face at the sight of her sent warmth spreading through Lily's chest. "You look beautiful," he said simply as he held her chair. "Thank you," Lily replied, feeling a blush color her cheeks despite everything they had already shared. "You look quite handsome yourself." It was true. Jake had made an effort with his appearance. His shirt was freshly pressed, his hair neatly combed, his face cleanly shaven. He still wore his gun belt, Lily noticed, but in Yuma that hardly set him apart from other men. Over breakfast, Jake outlined his plan for the day: a tour of the town, introductions to people he thought might be helpful to Lily, and finally her meeting with the school board chairman. "After that," he said, "I thought we might ride out a ways. There's something I'd like to show you." "What is it?" Lily asked, curious. Jake's eyes held a hint of mischief. "A surprise, but I think you'll like it." They spent the morning exploring Yuma. Despite its frontier reputation, the town boasted several substantial buildings: a courthouse, a hotel finer than the one where Lily was staying, several mercantiles, a bank, and of course, the infamous territorial prison across the river. Jake seemed to know many people in town, or at least be known by them. Storekeepers nodded respectfully, women smiled, and even the town marshal greeted him with what appeared to be genuine friendship. "Tucker," the lawman called, crossing the street to join them. "Heard you brought in Slater." "Good work." "Thanks, Cooper," Jake replied, shaking the man's hand. "Lily, this is Marshal James Cooper." "Cooper, Miss Lily Foster." The marshal tipped his hat to Lily. "Madam, a pleasure." He glanced between them with obvious curiosity, but was too polite to ask the questions Lily could see forming behind his eyes. "Miss Foster might be taking the new teaching position," Jake explained. Showing her around town, understanding dawned on Cooper's face. "Well now, that'd be a fine addition to our community. Children here need more learning than they're getting." "I'm meeting with Mr. Davis this afternoon," Lily said, "though I haven't decided anything for certain yet." Cooper nodded knowingly. "Well, Yuma's growing." Good place for new beginnings. His eyes flickered to Jake. For everyone. The implication was clear, and Lily felt a surge of gratitude toward this man who seemed to approve of whatever was developing between her and Jake. As they continued their tour, Jake pointed out a small house on the outskirts of town. "That's where the last teacher lived," he said. "Goes with the position, I'm told." Lily studied the modest dwelling, 2 rooms, from what she could see, with a small porch and a yard that showed signs of once having been a garden. It was humble compared to her family home in Boston, but it represented something precious: independence. "It's perfect," she said softly. Jake smiled, understanding in his eyes. "Thought you might like it." Her meeting with Mr. Davis, a balding, earnest man with spectacles and a passion for education, went better than Lily could have hoped. Her Boston background and her father's reputation as a teacher impressed him, and he seemed particularly pleased by her suggestion to offer evening classes for adults who wished to improve their reading and mathematics. "We can offer $10 a month," he said apologetically. "Not what you'd earn back east, I'm sure, but the house is included, and most families supplement with food and such." "That would be more than adequate," Lily assured him. "When would you need me to start?" "Fall term begins in September," Davis said. "But if you could come a few weeks earlier to prepare, that would be ideal." Lily glanced at Jake, who had remained silent throughout the interview but whose presence lent her confidence. "I believe that would be possible," she said. Davis beamed. "Wonderful. I'll inform the rest of the board, but I can tell you they'll be delighted. Finding qualified teachers willing to come to Arizona isn't easy." As they left the meeting, Jake touched Lily's elbow lightly. "You didn't commit to anything," he observed, "still keeping your options open." "One option in particular," Lily replied, meeting his eyes. "I believe you mentioned a surprise," Jake's smile returned. "I did. If you're not too tired from all the walking." "Not at all," Lily assured him. "Lead on, Mr. Tucker." They collected their horses from the livery and rode out of town, following the river for several miles before turning onto a smaller track that wound through cottonwood trees and mesquite. The land here was surprisingly green compared to the desert they had traversed, with water enough to support grass and trees. "It's beautiful," Lily said as they rode side by side. "So different from what I expected of Arizona." "River changes everything," Jake agreed. "Makes life possible in places that would otherwise be too harsh." After about an hour's ride, they crested a small rise and Jake reined his horse to a stop. "There," he said, pointing ahead. "What do you think?" Lily followed his gesture and caught her breath. Before them lay a small valley, sheltered by low hills on 3 sides with the river curving along the 4th. A simple cabin stood near a grove of cottonwoods, and beyond it stretched pastureland where several horses grazed peacefully. "Jake," Lily said softly, "what is this place?" "It's called Willow Creek Ranch," Jake said, watching her reaction closely. "Not much as ranches go 160 acres, most of it good grazing. Cabin needs work, but it's solid. Previous owner died last winter. His widows moved back east looking to sell." Understanding dawned on Lily. "This is what you meant last night, about investing in land." Jake nodded, suddenly looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Thought you might want to see it before making any decisions. It's not much compared to what you're used to, but it's perfect," Lily interrupted, her heart full. "Absolutely perfect." Relief and something deeper crossed Jake's face. "Really, you're not just saying that?" "I would never just say something so important," Lily assured him, reaching across to touch his arm. "It's beautiful, Jake. I can see why you were drawn to it." They dismounted and explored the property together. The cabin was indeed solid, though it needed repairs and improvements. There was a small barn, a corral, and even the beginnings of an orchard that had been sadly neglected. "With work, it could be something special," Jake said as they stood on what might someday be a proper porch. "Place for horses, maybe cattle eventually." "And children?" Lily asked softly. Jake's eyes, when they met hers, held a depth of emotion that took her breath away. "If that's what you want." "Is it what you want, Jake?" Lily pressed. A home, a family, the very things you said were dangerous for a man like you. Jake was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving from Lily to the land spread before them and back again. All my life, he finally said, I've been moving. Never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots, told myself it was safer that way. He took her hands in his. Then I found you in that canyon and something changed. Started thinking about things I hadn't let myself want before. What things? Lily asked, though she thought she knew the answer. This, Jake said simply, gesturing to encompass the ranch, the future it represented. A place that's ours, work that matters, children someday maybe. His eyes held her steadily. You, Lily, most of all you, Lily's heart soared at his words. That's what I want too, she whispered. Jake drew her closer. It won't be easy, he warned. Building something here will take hard work, years of it. Nothing worthwhile comes easily, Lily replied. My father taught me that. And my past is behind you, Lily said firmly. We'll face whatever comes together. Jake smiled then, the last of his reservations fading. Together, he agreed. I like the sound of that. When he kissed her this time, it felt like a promise not just of passion or companionship, but of a shared life, a future built with 4 hands instead of 2. They stayed at the ranch until the sun began its descent toward the western hills, talking of practical matters and dreams alike. Jake spoke of the horses he hoped to raise, Lily of the school she would establish in town while helping build their home here. We should head back, Jake said finally, reluctant but practical. Don't want to ride in the dark. As they mounted their horses for the return journey, Lily took one last look at the small valley that might soon be their home. How soon can we buy it? She asked. Jake laughed, delighted by her eagerness. Need to arrange the money first. Between your share of the bounty and what I've saved, we can make a good offer. He guided his horse alongside hers. Thought we might speak to the bank tomorrow if you're sure. I've never been more sure of anything, Lily said with absolute conviction. They rode back to Yuma in the golden light of late afternoon, planning their future with each mile. By the time they reached town, they had sketched out a timeline: secure the ranch, begin repairs on the cabin, establish Lily in her teaching position for the fall term. And then? Jake asked as they returned their horses to the livery. Lily smiled. And then, I think, a wedding. The joy that blazed across Jake's face was answer enough. They married 3 weeks later in Yuma's small church, with Marshall Cooper and his wife as witnesses. Lily wore a simple dress of pale blue that Martha Hollister had helped her make during a brief return visit to the ranch where their journey had truly begun. Jake, uncomfortable but handsome in a new shirt and string tie, had never taken his eyes off her throughout the ceremony. The purchase of Willow Creek Ranch had been finalized the previous week, and they had already begun the work of transforming it into a home. The cabin roof had been repaired, the windows reglazed, and the beginnings of a proper garden established near the kitchen door. As autumn approached, Lily took up her position at the Yuma school while Jake focused on the ranch repairing fences, expanding the corral, and beginning the process of acquiring horses for breeding and training. They divided their time between the small teacher's house in town during the week and the ranch on weekends, gradually moving more of their belongings to the place that was becoming their true home. Word spread quickly through the territory about Jake Tucker's skill with difficult horses. By spring, he had a waiting list of ranchers wanting him to work with their animals. Lily, meanwhile, had established not only a thriving day school but popular evening classes for adults eager to improve their education. Their first child, a son they named Thomas after Lily's father, was born the following winter, a sturdy, blue-eyed boy who seemed to combine Jake's quiet strength with Lily's determination. Martha Hollister traveled from her ranch to help with the birth, staying for a month afterward to assist the new parents. "You've done well for yourselves," she observed one evening as they sat before the fire in the now comfortable cabin. Thomas slept peacefully in a cradle Jake had crafted himself, while outside the wind whispered through the cottonwoods. "We have," Lily agreed, her hand finding Jake's. though I sometimes wonder at the strange path that brought us here." Jake squeezed her fingers gently. "Strange path indeed," he murmured, "from a canyon with no food to this." Martha looked between them knowingly. "Some would call it destiny," she said, "finding each other just when you both needed it most." "I call it the best luck of my life," Jake said simply. Later, after Martha had retired to the small guest room they had added to the cabin, Lily and Jake stood together on the porch, looking out at the land that had become their home. Stars scattered across the Arizona sky like diamonds on black velvet, the same stars that had witnessed their first nights together in the desert. "Do you ever miss it?" Lily asked. "The life you had before," Jake considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss the freedom of it," he admitted. Answering to no one, going where the trail led. He drew her closer against the night chill. "But it was a lonely freedom. What I have now, you Thomas, this place it's worth more. Even with all the work," Lily teased gently. "The leaky roof, the broken fences, the midnight feedings." Jake laughed softly, even with all that. He turned her to face him, his expression growing serious, especially with all that. Lily reached up to touch his face, still weathered by sun and wind but softer now, less guarded. "I love you, Jake Tucker," she said simply, "more with each passing day." "And I love you, Lily Tucker," he replied, the name still new enough to bring a smile to both their faces. "Always will." As they stood together under the vast Arizona sky, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. She had come west seeking a dream someone else had painted for her, only to find herself abandoned in a canyon with no food, no water, and seemingly no hope. But in that moment of greatest despair, Jake Tucker had appeared a man unlike any she had known before. He had shared his last meal with her, and in doing so had begun the sharing of a lifetime. Together, they had faced danger, discovered trust, and built a love as enduring as the land around them. Their story had begun in the harshest of circumstances, yet it had blossomed into something beautiful, proof that even in the unforgiving terrain of the Arizona territory, love could take root and flourish. As Jake bent to kiss her beneath the starlit sky, Lily knew with absolute certainty that this man, this life, this love was the future she had been seeking all along.